Learning today Daf Nun Beis. We start a few lines, or a few words that is, on the bottom of Daf Nun Aleph Amud Beis. Keitzad Asa Maimer Chulu. So this is in the Mishnah, after it brings the machlokes between Rabbi Gamliel and the Chachamim, in the beginning of the Perek here, which is a machlokes regarding get achar get, or Maimer achar Maimer. Right after that, the Mishnah says Keitzad, and it goes on to speak about a whole different subject, about a Maimer first, and then after the Maimer, any of the other things, whether a get, or chalitza, or bia. So usually when it says in the Mishnah Keitzad, it's a continuation. So the Gemara wants to understand what this Keitzad here is. Frag the Gemara, when the Mishnah says Keitzad, then it brings the following cases there. Hai get achar getu. Are those cases that the Mishnah brings afterwards the case that it just was speaking about? Get achar get. It speaks about other cases. Amar Rav Yehuda, so Rav Yehuda answers, Hachi ka'ama. This is how you have to learn the Mishnah. Get achar get. First it mentions the halacha of a yavam that gave a get and gave another get. Umayma achar maimer. And then the halacha of a maimer, and then again another maimer with another yavama. Kidam mara. So that's already what was explained. That's the machlokes of Rabbi Gamliel and the Chachamim. And then the Mishnah goes on with a new subject. Yavam echad v'yavama achas. When you have one yavam and one yavama, keitzad hatarasan. How does a yavam come to be matir, a yavama to be married to him, or to be get mutter l'shok? And then the Mishnah goes on to say asa maimer b'yavimtai. He did maimer, and then after the maimer v'nasan lo get. He gave her a get as well. So then tzrichei menu chalitza. So she's going to have chalitza. And the Mishnah goes on with all the different scenarios that it speaks about. So the point of here is that from Keitzad in the Mishnah, it starts a new subject. It's not elaborating on what it spoke about before. The next thing it said in the Mishnah was Asa maimer u'boal hareizu kimitzvasa. A person that gives his yivama maimer, kedushim b'derabanan, and then following that he's boiler, which is the yibum. So then this is the mitzvah. He did perfectly. Shall we say the lashon of the Mishnah here is a rayet to what Rav Huna said? Rav Huna says as follows: Mitzvahs yivama. What is the mitzvah? How do you do yibum? Mekadesh. First, he should be mekadesher, gives her the kedushin, which is the maimer. V'achar kach boil, and after that, he's boiler, the mitzvah of yibum. So you see that Rav Huna said that this is the order, the way it should be done. In other words, the chiddush of Rav Huna is you don't go and do yibum, which is to be boiler right away without kiddushin, but just like a regular kiddushin. First there's the kiddushin, and then there's the nisuin. Here, similar, you have the kiddushin, and then you boil. So Gemara says, no, you can read the Mishnah a little differently. Eimeh, the way to understand the Mishnah is, af zeh k'mitzvasa. Mishnah is saying that you don't have to do the Kedushin before. You can go and do the Yibum, be boiler right away without Kedushin. But even if he did do the Maimer before, and then the Kedushin, this is also Kemitzvasa. This is also done well. Frag the Gemara, if that's what the Mishnah is saying, so then Pshita, it's obvious. If the Chiddush would be to say Dafka, that you should do it this way, so then the Chiddush is like Rav Huna. But if you're saying that you could do Maimer before, and then to be boiler, that's also fine. Pshita, that's obvious that it's fine. Says the Gemara, now the Chiddush here is as follows. Sol kedaita chamina. There would be a svara to say that kivin da'am amar, since the master said as follows, ha'isa maimer b'yavimtai, you once had this before in the Gemara, that a person that does maimer, the kedushim b'derabanan for the yavama, so now parcha heimenu zikas yavamin, the original connection that he had to his yavama, which is the regular zika to a yavama, that flies away, that's removed, and now v'chola olav zikas eirisen. Unisuin. Now there's a different kind of a connection. There's a connection like you usually have with a Isha Neisha when he does the first stage of Kiddushin or Eidisin, and then he has to go ahead and do Nisuin like a regular marriage. There's first Eidisin, and then there's the Chuppah, which is Nisuin. So here as well, once you do the Maimer, you're now in your relation with this Yevamos similar to a regular wife after the Eidisin. So Eimeh, I would think, so based on this, that maybe lav mitzvah kavod. At this point, if you go on your boiler, so this is like a regular wife now. It's not like anymore the mitzvah of yibum. So maybe you're not fulfilling the mitzvah in this way. Kamash malan, that's why the Mishnah is saying that it's not only that you're allowed to do this, and now you become like a regular wife, but you're actually still fulfilling the regular mitzvah of yibum as well. Gufe, to go back now to the statement itself, that Rav Huna said, Amar Rav Huna, mitzvahs yivamin, the mitzvah of yibum, how is it done? Mekadesh, first he gives it the kiddushin, the maimer, v'achar kach boil, and then he's boiled, then the yibum itself. Vim bo'al v'asa maimer, if he went first and was boil, the mitzvah of Yibum, and then only afterwards he gave her a Kiddushin B'Derabanan, Kana. He's already kaina her. Once he's boil her, that's the mitzvah of Yibum, so it's done. He's already she's fully his wife. V'im Baal, so the Gemara asks on this. In Baal Vasa Maimer. Just said over here that he says that if you first boil and then you give her a Kedushim D'Rabbanan, that you're kaina her. She's your wife. In fact, the Gemara Pshita, it's obvious. The Hakanya Bibiyah. Once he's boiler, so by a Yevamos, that's the full mitzvah of Yibum, and she becomes your wife. And the Maimer that you do following that is sort of worthless. It doesn't add anything. But why would I think that it should take away from the fact that she's now fully your wife? So the Gemara says, rather read it as follows. In Baal Beloy Maimer. What Rav Huna was saying is, even though the best way to do it is first Maimer, and then to be boiler, but if he was boiled directly Beloy Maimer without any Kedushin before, Kana. Just being boiler itself, that's the Yibum, and he's fully kind to be his wife. Unlike usually, where there's two stages, there's the Edison and then the Nisuin. Fragt the Gemara, how could this be? But Vatanya, we learned in the Braise that Loike, that he gets Malkus for this. When a person is boil without doing the Kedushin first, so you get Malkus for this. If you get Malkus, so that would sound like you get Malkus Minat Teire, so that means that it's not the way it's supposed to be done. So the Gemara says, no. This loike here is makis mardis midrabanan. This is only a makis mardis, not the regular makis minatayre, but it's a makis mardis only midrabanan. What's the source of this? The Rav Mangid, Rav would give a makis mardis man the mekadesh bebiyah for someone that would do kiddushin with biyah, even though the Mishnah in the beginning of kiddushin says that you could be mekadesh yisha with kesef shtar or biyah. One of the options is biyah, but nevertheless, Rav would give malchus for someone that would be mekadesh just with biyah. And also here the Gemara is going to bring what Rav gave Malchus, and this is again a Makis Mardis for various different things. The whole list of things over here. Umanda Mekadesh B'Shuka. Also for a person that's Mekadesh's wife in the middle of the marketplace. And this is not only Biyah, this is B'chlal, even Kesef and Shtar. Rashi says this is a Pritzis. It's to go and just make a Kiddushin right there in the marketplace to be Mekadesh's wife. And also Umanda Mekadesh B'Loi Shiduchi. Person that's Mekadesh's wife without having an engagement before. Uman the mevatel gita, and also a person that sends a get, and after he sends the get, he's mevatel the get. He says, "Oh, this get that I said, that is a bottle." So now the woman gets the get. She thinks that she's divorced. She doesn't realize the husband was mevatel the get, causes serious problems. And also man the masal midah gita, person that sends a get or gives a get, and then he calls over witnesses and he gives them over on midah that the get is not a get, similar to being mevatel the get. So also this causes major problems. Now, even though the halacha is, when you give a get, the Bezdin makes this person say that whatever maidah you would give against the get should not take effect, and neither way the get is effective, and so his maidah is really worthless. But because Adam hear him saying this maidah, that I don't want this get, they may think that the get is batal, and therefore they may think that she's still his wife, so it causes problems. And also another case he would give makas mardis for, uman de poker shlicha de rabbanon. A person, Rashi here says, means he's chutzpahdik to a shliach of the Bezdin that comes to him to demand something of him. Uman, another case, uman de shoy shamte de rabbanon alei tlosin yomin, a person that keeps a chedem that the Bezdin put upon him, or the rabbanon put upon him 30 days, and he doesn't care about it. He doesn't come to the Bezdin to discuss and demand to take care of the fact that he has this shamta upon himself. Another case, val chasone de dor bebei chamui, a son-in-law that's living in the house of his father-in-law. It's not a good idea because of a suspicion that there might be of a relation between the son-in-law and the mother-in-law. So therefore they should live in a different place. Okay? So on this the Gemara asks, here it says that he would give makis mardis for somebody that's living by his father-in-law. The chalif, so now the Gemara says the doir in. That means only someone that's living in his in-law's house. But the chalif light, but if he just passes through his in-law's house, then it's not an issue. But for Hahu, there was a story with an individual, the chalif above the bechamui, he passed through the door of his in-laws, and v'nagder Rav Sheshes, and Rav Sheshes gave him this makas mardis, and seemingly this is what Rav was talking about. You give makas mardis, so over here, even just passing through, you gave him makas mardis. So the Gemara says, no, that was an unusual situation. Hahu made him havadayim mechamse. That was a person that there was actually a suspicion about him having a relation to his mother-in-law, and I guess he was told to stay away, and still he walked by the house of his in-laws, so over there Rav Sheshes gave him makas mardis. But usually it's not an issue. Now the Gemara brings another version regarding what Rav would give Makis Mardis for. And Nerdoi had a much shorter list. Nerdoi said, Bekulu loy mangid Rav. Regarding all of these cases that we just mentioned there, Rav would not give Makis Mardis. Ella lemekadesh b'biyah u'beloy shiduchi. Only a person that's Makadesh's wife with biyah, and it was also without an engagement period before. Or ve'ekedamri, another version is afilu b'shiduchi. If he's being Makadesh's wife with biyah, even if there was an engagement, still he would give Makis Mardis mishum pritzusa, because it's pritzis. So, according to this version, which we paskin like the second version here, the other things that were mentioned before is not something that he gave Makis Mardis for. So therefore, to live in your in-law's house is not an issue. One of the examples mentioned before is not an issue. Taisus over here says, because this is all the things in Midrabanan, we paskin like the more lenient opinion that a person could live in his in-law's house. So
we say loikin.
Yeah.
If you get married without kedushin, that doesn't apply. I mean, without
Shidduchin.
Without shidduchin, that doesn't apply to Yevama.
No. By Yevama there's a zikah. Yeah, correct. That does not apply to Yevama. By Yevama,
because the further from the question is much, but that you have to have it.
No. That does not go on Yevama. By Yevama there's a zikah automatically, whether you like it or not.
What was the question about Tanya Loike and
Loike, Vatanya Loike without maimer. You might have thought that you have to do first kiddushin in order to be able to do the biyah, to be boil. Even by Yevama, not shidduchin, but kiddushin. The Gemara thought you should have to do a kiddushin. And at that the Gemara says that you don't have to, because it's only a makis mardis. But minatayre, it will take effect. Tana Rabbanah, we learned in the Braisa, Keitzat Maimer. So how is the Maimer, which is the kiddushin, done between a Yavam and a Yevama? So the answer is, it's basically the same like every kiddushin. Nasan lo kesef, shava kesef, he gives her money or shava kesef, and like by every kiddushin, he tells her hareit mukadeshesli. There's actually different versions in the Rishonim. When he tells her hareit mukadeshesli, does he say the regular lashon hareit mukadeshesli, kedas Moshe v'Yisrael, or maybe a little bit of a different lashon that's more appropriate for a yavam and yavama? But other than that, it's the same kiddushin the way it is by every marriage. Or bishtar keitzad. Question is, when you mekadesh isha with a shtar, how are you mekadesh her with a shtar? So the Gemara asks on this, b'shtar keitzad, you're asking how you would do it with a shtar? Like every kiddushin with a shtar. Kidam maran. Like it already is taught, but you get a regular kiddushin. What does it say there in the Masechta Kiddushin? So it says there in the Braisa as follows: Kaitza kasav la'al yar. He writes her on a paper, or a lacheres, or on a broken piece of earthenware, or on earthenware. Afal pisha ein bo yishava pruta. The shtar does not have to be even worth a pruta, and he writes her arei mukadeshesli, and he gives her the shtar. So why should it be any different here? So what's the question of keitzad b'shtar? Amar Abaye, so Abaye explains it wasn't speaking about the shtar kiddushin. Hachi ka'amar. The question was regarding shtar ksubas yivam and keitzad. When you write a ksuba for a yivama, how is that written? It's not exactly the same like a regular ksuba. Kasav law, so he writes to her, Anna Pliny bar Pliny. So I, Pliny bar Pliny, sorry. Kabilis yas Plynus yivimti alai. I accept this plainness, this yavama upon myself. Lazun or lefarnasa karoi, to feed her, to give her parnasa appropriately. And then but the heksubasa al nichse baila arishin. But the ksuba money, the actual ksuba that he would owe her if he divorces or if he dies, that comes from the money of the first husband, of the brother that died. But then we less law mirishin, if there isn't money from the first husband for the ksuba, then to kinur la rabbana misheni. Then chacham will misakna that now the yavam will have to give ksuba from his own. Even though he could come and argue and say, this is not a wife I chose, the Eibush is giving me this wife, why should I have to pay a ksuba for this? But nevertheless, chacham will misakna that he should have to give, and the reason is, kedei should loite kala bein of loitzia. One of the reasons for a ksuba is that a person shouldn't be light in his eyes to divorce his wife because he knows he has to pay for it. So therefore, even this wife that the Eibush is giving him in Hashemayim, nevertheless, he's going to have to give her money for a ksuba if there's no money from the brother. Abai asked a question from Rabbe. Here the Gemara is going to bring various different cases of a yavam that gives his yavama a get. Before he did anything, he wasn't miyavmer, no maime, he just gave her a get. One of the things that were mentioned in our mission, person that went ahead and gave a get to his yivama. So nasan lo get, he gives her the get, V'amar, and he said, Harei at mugureshes heimeni, you're divorced of me, but v'yat muteres l'chol adam, but you're not allowed to marry anyone else. Mahu. What's the halacha with such a kind of a get that a yavam would give to his yavama? Now, what's the halacha when a person would give such a kind of a get b'chlal to his wife? It doesn't take effect b'chlal. So Rashi here brings every get has to dafka be that he's matter her to the entire world. Question is, maybe here there's reason that you think it should be different. So now, yavama, get yavama over here, the get by yavama d'Rabbanan, who the whole Inyan that a get works by yavama is only d'Rabbanan. Menatayr, it doesn't work b'chlal. So again, get yivama d'Rabbanan hu. So it's only d'Rabbanan that it's a get. The mahani get the mahani beishisish mahani biyavama. So maybe I should say, so just like the get regarding a regular shisish, whatever works there, so mahani biyavama, that works for yivama. Get le mahani beishisish, le mahani biyavama. Or get that does not work by regular shisish, so should not work by yivama either, because the Rabbanan are masakin similar to what a get is minatayre. Or maybe I should say, asi lechlufi begita, that maybe over here there is exedim d'Rabbanan that you might confuse it with a regular get, and even after he gives his yivama a regular get, this yivama may go and be kindness or may go and marry her even after he gave her a regular get. So he answered and said, Chayshinon dilma asi lechlufi begita. We are chayshish over here that he might come to confuse this with a kosher get, with a regular get, and therefore this get as well, he's not going to be able to be meyavmer anymore. Maskef lo Rabbi Bar Chanan. So Rabbi Bar Chanan asked on this halacha, if he's saying that even a get that's puzzle, but still he can't be meyavmer, elamata, how about go a step further? Yov lo naira balma. He gives her a get, and the get is an empty piece of paper. Hachanami de pasla. You're also going to say that you're going to confuse that with a regular get, and therefore after he gave her this empty piece of paper, and it's not a kosher get, obviously, that he can't be meyavmer as well. So he's basically saying, if over there you don't go that far, so by this possible get as well, you shouldn't be geyser that you come to confuse it. Amalei, so he says, no, it's different. Hasam le pasal b'kahuna. If a person gives his wife a get that's an empty piece of paper, this does not even passel her to kahuna. The get is so puzzled to it has no shaychus to get b'chlal. It's not an empty piece of paper, so there's no reason to be geyser that you could confuse it with a regular get. Hacha kapasel b'kahuna. When a person writes a get to his wife and he writes Harei materes l'chol adam, sorry again, he says Harei, you're not my wife, but you're not mutter l'chol adam. So it's a passel get, but it does passel her to kahuna. The Tanya we learned in the Braisa, v'isha grusha meisha lo yikachu. So what do you learn from this? That a kohen should not marry a woman that was divorced. Afilu lo nizgarsha ele meisha. Even if she was only divorced from her husband, and the husband wrote in the get, but you're still not mutter to anybody else, and that's a pasal get, still lo yikachu. Even such a kind of a get given to a person's wife also passes her to a kohen. The hainu reyach haget shepaisel b'kahuna. This is what's called the reyach of a get. It's not a kosher get, but it still has in it the smell of a get. It's similar to a get, and therefore it does passel her to a kohen. So it's that kind of get that we could confuse with a regular get, and they were geyser by a yavama that after he gives this get, he can't be miyavmer anymore. Amarami bachame hare amru. They were said amar echad lelavler. A person says to the sefer that writes a get, Ksev get la risasi. Write a get for this woman that I'm already me'oris to, the first stage of marriage. He already gave her a kiddushin. And he tells him, write this get for the arusa likisha echnesena agashena. And then afterwards, when I fully marry her, I'm going to use this get to divorce her. So is that a get? Hareza get. Yeah, this is a good get. Why? Because even at this point, after Edison, the first stage of marriage, she's really a full Eishesish already. He can use this get at this point to be Megadisher. So even though he's writing into it that he's only going to use the get Lichesha Echnesena, but because he has the power to divorce her now, the get is a good get. But Oliisha Ba'alma, if a person says, write me a get for this woman that he's not at all married to, stam a woman in the street, and then he wants to go use it later after he went and married her, ain't get. So to use that, it's not going to be a get. When the get was written, he was writing it for this woman that he did not marry at all, so if he can't be Megadisher at that point when he's writing the get, he can't use the get later. That's the halacha that we learned, b'chlal, b'negei to a person and a woman or his wife. Now the question over here is, b'negei to a yavam and yavama. So boy, Rami Bachame, the question was asked as follows. L'yavimtoi mahu. A person that wants to use a get that he wrote before he was miyavim her. Right after his brother passed away, there's a zika. And then he writes then a get that he's going to use it after he's miyavim her. What's the halacha over here? Do I say kivin da gidebe, because even before he was miyavim her, there was already a ziki, he was connected to her karusase damya. So she's already to some degree like his wife, like an arusa. So just like we said before, if you write a get for an arusa, you can use it after he fully marries her. Same thing here. Or maybe it's different. Kivin delayavid ba maimer. The zika alone is too weak of a connection. Since he did not do yet maimer, which is the kedushim of the rabbanon, so if he's writing a get only within a time when there's a zika, it's like writing a get for a woman in the street where we said it doesn't take effect. So over here as well it doesn't. Teiko. So this is not the one doesn't have an answer to this. But Rav Chananya has another question regarding a get. Kosav get lizikosai v'loy lemamore. A person has the zika to his yevama. Now, in addition to the zika he asked his yevama, he also gave her a kedushim with the rabbanon. Now, when he wrote the get, so usually if a person would write a get to his yevama in such a case where there's a zika, and besides that he gave her a kedushim with the rabbanon, so the get that he's writing works for both. The get removes that maimer, that kedushim with the rabbanon, and the get also has an impact on the zika. The get also weakens the connection of the zika as well. But what happens over here if this person writes clearly that he's only writing the get for the zika, to remove the zika, but not for the maimer. He's not writing it to remove the kedushin. Or in the reverse, l'maimada, he's writing a get just for the kedushin, v'loy lizikasei. He's not writing a get to affect the zika. Mahu, does this get take effect? So what's the basis of this question of the Gemara? So as we'll see here in the continuation, the basis of this is, by a regular get, person divorces his wife, so you can't divorce a half a wife. You can't divorce your wife and say, half of my connection to you is being divorced here. So the question is, what happens over here? Mahu. Maimer ilui zika karami. Do I say, when a person gives his wife, the yevama that is, a maimer, a kedushim with rabbanon, that gets added to the connection of zika, and now that sort of strengthens the connection of the zika. The zika is one level of connection. Once you give her the maimer, that just gets added and strengthens that connection. Now it becomes one big strong connection. So therefore, v'havalei kim begarish chatzi isha. So now you have this one strong connection of the maimer and the zika together. So if you're giving her a get for just one and not the other part, so then it's like divorcing a half a wife. Divorcing a half a wife is nothing. Or maybe we view this differently. The maimer is one kind of connection, and the zika is another kind of connection. It's two separate things. So therefore, if you give a get for one part, it's going to only affect that part. For if you're going to give just the get for the maimer, it's going to remove the maimer, but the zika remains. Or if you give the get for the zika, so then now there's going to be the issur of lo yibana, because to some point you already took off the zika through this get, but the maimer remains. Right, so each one is separate. So the Gemara says, this should be answered from what Rava said pretty clearly about this exact question. Rava said before, we learned this before in the Masechta, Nosan get lemaimarai, you give a get, and you're giving the get just to sever the maimer, hutra tzarasa. Now tzara can go ahead and do yibum. This is on a Gemara before where it spoke about a case where you have a woman, a yevama, that was connected to two brothers. She was a yevama from one brother, then a second brother did maimer. So in such a case, you can't do yibum when she's connected to two brothers. So Rava says, but if you give maimer, you give a get that is, for the maimer, it takes effect. So Rava clearly says that you can give a get just for the maimer itself, and it's not like being megarish a half a wife. So the Gemara says, you're right, Rava pshitale. Rava said this, and therefore to Rava it was obvious that you can do this, but Rav Chananya mibayale. Rav Chananya had a question, as we see here, and the teiko, and he did not have an answer to this question. Weiter, the Mishnah said, Cholatz v'asa maimer. If a person does chalitza, and then following the chalitza, he did maimer. So the Gemara says that once you did chalitza, so the maimer does not take effect at all. It's too late. After the chalitza, now there's a lav of lo yibana. Once there's a lav of lo yibana, no kedushin will take effect. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Zu Divrei Rabbi Akiva. So what it says here in the Mishnah is following Rabbi Akiva's opinion. The Amar Rabbi Akiva said, "Ein kiddushin toifsim b'chayvi lavin." There's no kiddushin in a case where the kiddushin is a lav. So over here, that's what's happening. After you gave chalitza, not as a lav of lo yibana. So anything you do after the chalitza, it will not take effect. But the Chachamim say, Yesh acha chalitza klum. That there is something that could take effect even after chalitza. Because even though it's a lav of lo yibana, but if you give maimer, that kedushin will take effect, even though it's an isser of a lav. How can you say that our Mishnah here is following Rabbi Akiva's opinion? But Vakatani Reisha, in the Reisha of the Mishnah it said, Nasan get, that if a Yavam gives the Yavama a get, Va'asa maimer, and then after he gave her a get, now he went ahead and did maimer. So what did the Mishnah say? Tzriche get v'chalitza. So you're going to need a get for the maimer. The maimer takes effect even after the get, and then you need a chalitza also. You need a chalitza for the whole zikah here. Navi Rabbi Akiva, if this Mishnah follows Rabbi Akiva, so Rabbi Akiva doesn't hold to this. Kivin the yav lo get. According to Rabbi Akiva, as we'll see soon in another place, Rabbi Akiva says that once you give a get for a yavame, mi mahani ba maimer. Should maimer take at all effect? Because Vatanya Rabbi Akiva said, Minayil no noisen get li yavimtoi shenesra lavelomis. Once you give a get to a yavame, she now becomes also for you to marry her forever. Shenema, the pasuk says, when a person divorces his wife, so the husband that sent her away, he's not allowed to remarry her if she married someone else. So these words, asher shilcha, are extra words. So we learn from this, acha shiluach. In any case that a person gives a get to his wife, he can't remarry her. And that includes over here, this case of a yavam giving his yavama a get. After he gives her a get, he can't remarry her again. So therefore, according to Rabbi Akiva, there seems to be a lav. After a person gives his wife a get, that he can't do any maimer again. So how does the Mishnah in the Reisha say that after a yavam gave his yavama a get, he can still do maimer? So it can't be Rabbi Akiva. Rav Ashi says, no, get yavamin midrabanan. Even according to Rabbi Akiva, the get that a yavam gives to his yavam, it doesn't work minatayra. It's only midrabanan. V'kra asmachta b'alma. That pasuk that he darshan from, it's only an asmachta. Tanya nami yachi. So we learned as well, like we said before, that the Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Akiva. Amar Rebbe. So Rebbe said, Ein advarim alalu amurim ela l'divri Rabbi Akiva. This that we said that after chalitza, so nothing else could take effect, that's only according to Rabbi Akiva. Shahaya isa chalutza ke'erve. So Rabbi Akiva said that a chalutza becomes like an erve, that now there's a lav of lo yibana, so there's an erve, and so that no maimer will take effect afterwards. But according to the chachamim, they say yesh acha chalutza klum, even after chalitza, so this, even though there's a lav, but still a maimer will take effect. Now Rebbe himself says, va'ani oimer, and I say that it depends. Hey Masai, when will I say that a kiddushin after chalitza could take effect, like the Chachamim said, bizman shekitsha l'shum ishus. If he's mekadesher, just stam as a regular wife, so then in such a case it'll take effect. Ava kitsha l'shum yevamis. But if after he gave her chalitza, now he comes and he gives a kiddushin, but not as a regular kiddushin. He says, I want to be meyavim you. If he gives a kiddushin as a yibum, then I say, even according to Rebbe, he says, Einacha chalitza klum. After chalitza, it will not take effect. Once you do chalitza, there is no concept of yibum anymore. If you want to be mekadesher as a regular wife, it's a isalav and it'll take effect. But as a yibum, that will not take effect. Tan Yedach, we learned similar in another braisa about this machlekes here. Hachayletz liyavimtoi v'chazav v'kitsha. He did chalitza and then he went and was mekadesher after chalitza. Rebbe says, Im kitsha l'shum ishos. If he's mekadesher just as a regular wife, so then it took effect because it's only a lav and it takes effect. But tzrichei menu get. She's going to need a get because of this. L'shum yevamos. If he's mekadesher as a yevame, ain't tzrichei menu get. At that point, as a yevame, it doesn't take effect at all. The Chachamim disagree, and they say ben shekit shel shum ishus, ben shekit shel shum yevamis, whether he was mekadesher as regular ishus or for yevamis tzrichei menu get. This kiddushin even after chalitza takes effect, and she'll need a get. So the Gemara here is going to bring now a good couple of opinions of how to understand the pshat of this machlekes. We'll learn some of it today. So the Gemara, Rav Yosef now explains, my time with the Rebbe. What's the basis of Rebbe's opinion that there's a chiluk? If he gives a kiddushin as a regular ishus, or he gives her a kiddushin as a yevama. So he explains, Asua ka'oide b'nichse ager. According to Rebbe, this is similar to a person that's doing work in the field, in the possessions of a ger that passed away, ukesava shalayhem. and he thinks that he's doing the work in his own property. In other words, what happened is a person owns a piece of land, and right next to him is another piece of land that was owned by a ger, and now after this ger passes away, it pretty much is hefker. Anybody that comes and does a chazakah there and does work there to be kainet can be kainet. But this person didn't even realize that what he's doing is in the possession of the ger. He thought he's working in his own property. So he didn't even do what he's doing with a kavanah to make a kinyan at all. So in such a case, the loikani is not going to be kainet, because what he's doing is not at all, he's not doing it l'shem kinyan at all. He thought he's working in his own property. So what's the comparison here? Rav Yosef is saying that it's the same thing over here. A person that's mekadesh isha after chalitza l'shem Yevamos, his whole kavanah is a mistake. After chalitza, there is no yibum anymore. There's no connection that he has to her in that sense. So therefore, his whole kavanah is a mistake, and therefore it doesn't take effect. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye argues on Rav Yosef. He says, "Midami, how could you compare our case to that case of a person working in the nechasim of the ger without any kavanah for a kinyan? Hasam loikamechaven lemikni. There, he has absolutely no kavanah to be kaina. He thought he's digging and working in his own field. He didn't realize what he was doing. Hacha kamechaven lemikni. Over here, this person is interested in being kaina this woman. He's having the wrong kavanah. He thinks he could be kaina as a yevama. He could only be kaina her as a ishus, as a regular wife. So he's having the wrong kavanah, but he at least is having a kavanah to be kaina her. So it's not exactly the same thing. So rather, Abai says, this would be similar to a case if there would be the possessions or the field of one ger that passed away, and he's working in that possession in that field of this ger, and he thinks that it belongs to a different ger that passed away. So in such a case, the kani, you will be kani, even though he confused the two fields, he didn't realize where he is that he's working, but if he has a kavanah for a kinyan, so it takes effect. So over here, it should take effect as well. So why does Rebbe say that if he has a kavanah for a yevama to be miyavmer, it doesn't take effect, but he did have a kavanah to be kainer as a wife? Elam Abaye, so Abaye says a different hezber. When Rebbe says that it doesn't take effect, the case over here is going to Omar law. He tells her as follows: Hiskachi li b'maimer yevamin. I want to be mekadesh you not only as a yevama, but with the maimer, with the takana of maimer that chachamim were misakin for a yevama. Here's the machlokes whether that could take effect. So Rebbe Savar, going back to what we mentioned in the beginning of the Yomad here, so Rebbe's opinion is, Maimer, this whole takana that Chachamim said that you can do Maimer midrabanan for a Yevama, Ilui Zika Karami. This is adding to Zika. Chachamim said when you have a Zika, you want to intensify that Zika, you can strengthen it through Maimer. So therefore, over here that can apply. Once you gave her chalitza, that removed the whole zika. So the whole takana of maimer doesn't come into play. Maimer is only to strengthen the zika. There's no zika left there anymore. For Rabbanan Savri, the Rabbanan hold, no, hay l'chudikoi, v'hay l'chudikoi. When Chachamim were misakin maimer, it's not to strengthen zika. Maimer is a takana for a yevama. You can do a kedushin with the Rabbanan, similar to a regular kedushin, but it's not there to strengthen the zika. It's a separate thing. So therefore, in the beginning, before chalitza, if he gives her maimer, would it not work? It will work then, and it has nothing to do with the zika. So hashtanami imahani. So now as well, it's going to work, and it's not connected to the zika at all. So even though the zika was removed through the chalitza, but if he's mekadesher with this maimer, it's still going to work, even though there's no zika anymore. It's going to take effect like a regular kiddushin. Let's learn one more pshat today. Like I said, there's a few pshatim here. Rava has one more pshat here. Rava explains the machlokes of Rebbe and the Chachamim as follows. If he's telling her clearly that he's being mekadesher with this maimer that Chachamim were mesaking for Yevama, everybody will agree that it will work because the maimer is separate from the zika. So even though the zika was removed, the maimer could still take effect now. Over here, the argument between Rebbe and the Chacham is a bit different. Going to Omar law, when he's Mekadesher, he told her, Hiskachi li bezikas Yevamin. He used this language of zikas Yevamin. I'm being Mekadesh you with the zika of Yevamin. So Rebbe holds, yesh zika. That when a person is saying that he wants to be Mekadesher with the zika of Yevamin, that he's taki using the zika. That kind of kedushin is taka kedushin that is using the zika to be mekadesher, and therefore only when that zika is there could he use the zika to be mekadesher. But now over here, vasay chalitza afkate lezika. Once he gave her chalitza and he removed that zika, you can't use a kedushin with this kind of a lashon where you're using the zika to be mekadesher. Rabbani Savri, Rabbanan hold, Ein Zika. They hold B'chlal, the connection of the Zika is not so strong. So even if a person uses this lashon, that he's being Mekadasher with the Zika, it's not really a Kedushin with the Zika. The Kedushin is not really connected to that Zika, even though he uses that lashon. So therefore, in the beginning, if he uses this language, and he says, be Mekudash me with Zikas Yevamim, Miloi Mahani, does it not work? And it works really not connected to the Zika. It's a separate thing. So Hashtanami Mahani. So therefore over here as well, even after the Chalitza removed the Zika, the Kiddushin will still take effect according to the Chachamim.